All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce Susan Miller, our keynote speaker for the morning. Suzanne is the current director of the Bureau of Remediation and Waste Management at the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, that's a mouthful, which includes both the Materials Management Division and current investigations related to PFAS and in the soil and groundwater. Did not know that it was both. She started this role last June, and prior to that served for about 8 years as the department's Eastern Maine Regional Director out of Bangor. And prior to that, spent 10 years in the private sector in environmental consulting. Thank you and welcome.
All right, definitely you can hear me now. All right, thank you, everybody. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak here. So as I was just introduced, I'm Susanne Miller. I'm the current director for the Bureau of Remediation and Waste Management. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Bureau, it's the largest bureau the DEP has. We have 5 divisions: Materials Management, we have Division of Remediation, Division of Emergency Response Services, Division of Petroleum Services, the Division of Technical Services, which is like our in-house engineering firm. We've got engineers, hydrogeologists, geologists, chemists, data folks. And while not its own division, we've got about 60 staff within the Bureau of Remediation and Waste Management working on PFAS. We'll touch a little bit on that as we go. So many of you knew my predecessor, Dave Burns. He retired last May, the end of May, and I started in June, soon after. And when I came into the position, I knew there was a lot of change on the horizon. What I didn't realize is that seems like a gross understatement right now, a lot changing. So this presentation I'm going to focus on is our current priorities, some emerging issues, and some of those changes. But before we get started and we go through my presentation, I would like to talk about some of the larger issues because they have a reaching impact on what's going on within the department. So like most other state agencies, DEP has a lot of staff leaving the agency and a lot of loss of institutional knowledge. We have a lot of new staff coming in. We have staff coming in to start and only to turn around 2 months later and to leave because maybe they found a job with better pay. So we're struggling with this just like everybody else is out there in the world. Staff retention is a really big critical issue for us right now, especially as we have new programs. We have major new transitions in terms of new programs, a lot of new legislation to implement. We are also, the DEP is in current office space in Augusta. I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but in October, the DEP moved out of the Ray building. The Ray building is being renovated, and there's not enough physical space for all of the staff for DEP right now because the planning for this move took place at the height of COVID when everything was locked down. So basically, DEP is going to be working on some kind of a hybrid model right now with some staff being in some days of the week, some staff teleworking, and that's likely to be the reality for the agency for some time.
Right now?
Great, thank you. So as I move forward with my presentation, my intent is to cover our priorities for the year, as well as some emerging issues. So we're going to talk about an overview of our reporting requirements that are upcoming. We're going to talk a little bit about legislation and PFAS, product stewardship and waste diversion, as well as implementation of new programs. And I put the waste hierarchy to the right just to kind of remind us all of what we're aiming for, both at the state and also for you as stakeholders. So first, I want to mention that the materials management plan, this is the plan that comes out every 5 years, is required. It's required by 38 MRS 2122. The department's required to prepare an analysis of and a plan for the management, reduction, and recycling of solid waste for the state. The plan must provide guidance and direction to municipalities in planning and implementing waste management and recycling programs in the state, regional, and at local levels. So as I mentioned, due every 5 years, due January 2024, so that's coming. We're at mid-2022 now, so a year and a half isn't all that long. So we'll be working on that. And strategies for the next 5-year period, we're going to be looking at just, again, furthering strategies for managing and meeting the waste hierarchy. So we want to make sure that we're managing our waste in a way that we're moving farther up the waste hierarchy and less towards landfilling. We want to figure out what are our obstacles or disincentives to following the waste hierarchy, and making sure that we provide assistance to both businesses and communities. And so this little picture on the right is basically what it looks like. We'll have it on our website when it's completed, and you'll be able to see it. You can see the last one was done in 2019. Also, we have a report every 2 years that goes to the Maine legislature for waste generation and disposal capacity. I can imagine if you've been following the news in Maine and the legislature in Maine, you've been hearing a lot about waste capacity this year. So by January 2021 and biennially thereafter, the department must submit a report to the Joint Standing Committee of the legislature, so the ENR committee, providing information on statewide generation of solid wastes, statewide recycling rates, and available disposal capacity for solid waste. And so that, just to give you an overview of the lay of the land in Maine, I thought that would be helpful before we talk a little bit more about waste capacity. As of now, we have about 250 transfer stations, 2 commercial CDD processing facilities, 1 commercial anaerobic digester. There's several recycling and composting facilities, including 1 commercial sludge composting facility. There's 40 active landfills in Maine, 6 municipal, MSW ash, 3 municipal POTW sludge, 19 municipal, 1 state-owned, 1 commercial, and 10 generator-owned. This is actually quite a bit. I know that when I talk with some of the other states, the other New England states surrounding, they don't seem to have quite so many. So, a lot of it probably has to do with the logistics and transportation issues we have in Maine. We're a very big state. We're very spread out, and we need to have these facilities so that we can manage, what we have. So in terms of that report, we're going to be looking at submitting it again in January 2023 to the ENR committee. And I just want to review what we found in 2021. In 2021, some of the key findings indicated that there were 9 operating landfills accepting MSW or MSW ash with an estimated life ranging from 3 to 35 years. 3 operating waste to energy facilities at the time were licensed with a combined annual capacity of 550,000 tons. And overall, there was sufficient licensed landfill capacity for at least the next 10 years. So think about those numbers. And then I put a big but here, because 10 years is not that long when you consider the time it takes to actually establish or expand existing disposal facilities. So that's something to think about. Capacity, what we have available, is not just a regional issue, or is not just an issue in Maine right now. It's a regional issue. It's a national issue. And in talking with my counterparts in some of the other New England states, some of the New England states right now are in crisis mode. Connecticut's a great example. They're about to or just did close a major facility, and they're looking to shift a lot of their waste out of state. So just to give you sort of a bigger picture, competition for space is increasing. We have uncertainties with some facilities that can cover a wide area in Maine. And I just wanted to, use the coastal facility as an example. There's still some uncertainty there about what's going to happen. And then, of course, there's also new legislation that's going to have an impact on this, as well as new programs that we have in PFAS. So let's talk a little bit about new legislation. LD 1639 was passed and was signed by Governor Mills on April 18th. LD 1639 is called an act to protect the health and welfare of Maine communities and reduce harmful solid waste. A lot of us refer to this as the out-of-state waste bill. This is the bill that basically revises the definition of waste generated within Maine. It has an impact on waste that the state-owned landfill can accept. Its purpose is to limit the amount of, or the volume of CDD waste and processing residue that originates out of state. For example, we know a lot is coming from Massachusetts. This was brought forth to the legislature by concerns that were raised about, state-owned landfill capacity, what was going into the state-owned landfill, and concern about out-of-state waste coming into the state-owned landfill. So this is going to have potential regional impacts on the state as a whole in terms of how waste flows and moves around. And I want to just mention that this was not an emergency bill. So generally, I believe the legislature ended the 25th. And so I believe it's going to be around July 25th when all these new pieces of legislation are going to become, effective. So we'll talk quickly about PFAS. I don't want to get too bogged down in this because I'm sure you're going to all have questions, and this is not my PFAS presentation. So I want to talk quickly about LD 1911. This is another big piece of legislation affecting the waste community. This one's called an act to prohibit the contamination of clean soils with so-called forever chemicals. What this does is it bans land application of sludge and all sludge-derived products, which include composts and fertilizers that are sludge-derived. It's also going to require the department to put together some materials for the legislature next January. We have to complete a study on how to manage septic disposal. The department indicated during the legislative session that there was not enough information right now to understand fully the impact it would have to have a ban on sludge application. There's a lot of it. What we do know is that septic application does take place in parts of the state where there's not necessarily somewhere to take it that's close by. So we wanted to have an opportunity to take a look at that and come up with some solutions. So that report will be provided to the legislature the next session. This act also is going to require effluent testing. So some testing is going to be done by the Bureau of Water Quality from wastewater treatment facilities. The state is going to be paying for wastewater treatment facility testing at municipal and publicly owned treatment works, and independent or industrial wastewater treatment owners or facilities will have to pay for their own testing. So the key message on this that I want to emphasize before I leave today is that the DEP is committed to working with stakeholders on this. We recognize there's going to need to be some involvement with the waste community, with the wastewater community, to try to figure out, how we're going to handle sludge disposal over, in the near and short-term and long-term future. And so I want to let everybody know that Commissioner Loizem is committed to that, and she is planning to reach out to stakeholders sometime in the next several weeks to get this process started. We expect that we'll be fully engaging with our stakeholders, beginning this summer. So I'm going to shift gears now to product stewardship. So there are two facets to product stewardship. We have our annual product stewardship report, which basically is posted every year on our website on January 16th. And we accept public comment on it for 30 days. It goes through all of our different stewardship programs. And then we review comments and we revise as necessary and update the report and send it to the legislature by February 15th each year. The other thing I'll talk about in a little bit more detail and a few slides up is the new product stewardship framework law, or the packaging law. And we'll go into more detail about that. In the meantime, I just want to mention that regarding our stewardship report, we do talk about our different take-back programs, our stewardship programs, to include everything from our beverage containers, bottle bill, to e-waste, batteries, cell phones, lamps, paints, and mercury auto switches and thermostats. We also have our waste diversion program. Our waste diversion grant program is established to provide grants to both public and private entities to assist in programs, which are basically to help increase diversion of solid waste based on from disposal, from the landfill. We tend to award grants for composting, food scrap collection, reuse, recycling, and repair projects. From 2018 to 2021, we've awarded over $700,000. This year, we've awarded over $182,000. And I believe we have another round of this in the fall. So our food hierarchy, similar to our waste hierarchy, has sort of an upper tier where we want to strive for and a lower tier. And again, the lowest the lowest little point at the bottom is disposal, and the highest is to reduce, unwanted food to begin with, and to feed hungry people first. And then disposal, of course, being the least desired outcome. So our composting and organics management program provides technical assistance on this to municipalities, institutions, businesses, schools. We encourage you to reach out if you have any questions about that. So I'm going to shift gears again, talk a little bit about some of the new programs that we're implementing. We have a drug take-back stewardship program. This began after 2021. The 130th legislature passed a new law for take-back of pharmaceuticals. How this works is that drug manufacturers are required to participate in a DEP-approved stewardship program. Those programs are due to the DEP by July 1st this year. We do have a staff person staffed for this program. They started this year. Once these stewardship plans come into the DEP, the DEP has to either approve or reject the plans within 120 days. And the stewardship organization has to implement the plan within 180 days of the approval. So if you kind of add all those numbers up, essentially we're anticipating that these programs are going to be effective by summer of 2023. And just sort of as a side note, all Maine pharmacies must participate in a stewardship program, and mail order pharmacies must provide mail back envelopes upon request. So other new programs, our packaging law. This one's going to get a lot of attention, has gotten a lot of attention already. So again, this one was also enacted after the 130th legislature in 2021. The purpose of this is to reduce the volume and toxicity of packaging material from our products. Producers of products are basically going to be required to pay into a fund based on the amount, of packaging that's associated with their products. Ultimately, municipalities will be reimbursed for recycling and waste management costs from that fund. And then money will also be available for investments on regarding recycling infrastructure and also public education and outreach. So here's a diagram. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of small, but in terms of implementing this program, we just wanted to show this is how the money would be flowing. So you have your producers who, basically have to set aside money for the cost of managing the packaging associated with their products. That money is going to go into a stewardship fund. Again, there's going to be a stewardship organization. That stewardship organization will provide money then to municipalities for the waste handling costs of these packaging materials. The money will also be used to help fund infrastructure projects to help with recycling. And also the money will be used for education and outreach programs. So implementation timeline, I think this is probably what a lot of you really want to know. So we don't have the authority to actually have any staff for this until July 1st, 2022. Staff are currently working on hiring so that we're hoping to have someone in the door working on July 1st, 2022. And as soon as we have staff for this program, we're going to begin working on engaging stakeholders and starting drafting rules and ideas for rules. Now, that being said, the rule-making process is not fast. These are going to be at least partially or mostly major substantive rules, and that's going to require approval from both the legislature and the Board of Environmental Protection. So it may be a few years before the rules are fully adopted. We assume it'll be sometime around 2025. Maybe sooner, maybe a little later, it just depends on how the process goes. But the key thing is that the stakeholder involvement will start sooner rather than later. Once the rules are adopted, then there will be an RFP issued so that a product stewardship organization can be put together. That will be selected. And I think the key thing is that the first payments to the product stewardship organization are likely to come sometime in 2026. And in 2027, the municipalities will start getting the money. So those are the key dates. So this is my last slide. I just want to say a couple things about what to expect this year. So this summer, as I mentioned, DEP will be meeting with stakeholders to talk about PFAS, sludge, septage management. That's going to include both the waste management communities as well as the wastewater management communities. We are going to begin the implementation of the packaging law. We are also going to host a series of workshops on food waste diversion. These workshops are a half day. They're free, and we just sent a press release out, I think last week. The workshops are going to be in Kennebunk, Cumberland, Caribou, and Auburn. And this fall and winter, we are going to have some more information. I think it's important to mention that as part of the bilateral infrastructure legislation from Congress, there is money for solid waste. It's called the Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling Bill, SWIFR. From the EPA will be managing this money. I've sat in a few meetings with EPA to try to get more and more information about this. I think where they're at right now is still trying to figure out what they're going to do with this money, how they're going to divide it up among the states, and how they're going to, what the parameters are going to be for awarding, this money, grants, whatnot. But they have $55 million a year annually from 2022 to 2026. So if you, just extrapolate that out and divide that among all the states, maybe there'll be about $1 million per state, maybe a little less depending on, how much they want to focus on Maine versus somewhere else. But that's a good amount of money. It has to align with the national recycling strategy, and 20% of the dollars have to go towards environmental justice. That's a big deal for EPA right now, is this concept of environmental justice. And so for those of you who are able to learn a little bit more about environmental justice and learn about grant writing to help you frame your grant so that you can show that your community is an environmental justice community, that may help you, put you at the head of the line for funding. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, we will have some additional waste diversion grants that will be coming as well. So again, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave at 11 today, but I'll stay through the second break. So if anybody wants to come talk to me, I'll be here. I'm probably going to stay in the presentation in this room. And I think we have a couple minutes left, maybe about 5 or 6 minutes left for questions if anybody has some. Oh boy. Yes, absolutely. I think I sent them to Jessica, but I can go ahead and resend them to her. And yeah, absolutely. Yep. Oh, yes, PFAS. Per and polyfluoral alkyl substances. Basically, there are these substances, they're often referred to as forever chemicals. These are the substances that they're basically used in products that repel water or grease. So like your Gore-Tex jacket or your pizza boxes or your popcorn bags. And because they do such a great job at repelling grease and water, it's because of this fluorine carbon atom bond. It's really difficult to break, and they don't break down in the environment. And in fact, we don't really know quite the best technology to break these bonds. And so they're everywhere, and they're in our blood, they're in our environment, and it's just been causing a lot of problems. In Maine in particular, it's causing a lot of agricultural problems. Yep.
So I'm wondering if there is a definition for the word.
I'm sure there are different perspectives on that. What specifically are you? Okay. I would have to look closely at our legislation. I don't know if any of my DEP colleagues want to pipe in here, but I'd be more than happy to look at our current, rules and laws, but I don't, off the top of my head, I just don't.
State that lays the groundwork along the side. They make laws, rules. So they said incineration is not. Landfill.
Mark, go ahead. So it sounds like we got to do a little better with our outreach, is what you're saying. Yep. Yep. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'll see if I can go back and do my. Yeah, the latex and oil-based architectural paint. Yep. So just a brief mention. Any other questions? I'm going to defer to Brian on that. Brian? Yep, somebody back there. You mean like an exemption? Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that there's anything in the statute on that. Weren't there some studies, Brian, about that, like in somewhere like in Canada where they did some of this? Yeah, I mean, there might be some opportunity to talk more about that during the rulemaking process. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? What's that? One more? Yep. Yeah. Yeah, no, that. Yeah, so that's a great question. So the legislature required us to make sure that testing was completed at all the different landfills, as you know. And we've required 5 rounds of testing. We've completed round 1. We're working on round 2 right now. When that information is collected, we are posting the results, publicly, just for the 6 common PFAS, not the sum of 6, because you really don't compare leachate to drinking water. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But in terms of strategy, so the department is required to report that information to the legislature in 2024 with recommendations. So that is our strategy, is to collect this information, look at it, see if there's any trends over the next few years, see if we can have a better understanding of what's happening, report that information to the legislature, provide recommendations. But really, we're not going to be setting any rules or anything like that until the legislature tells us that we need to do that. So first would come legislation on managing that. In the meantime, we are working because of another bill that passed through the legislature this past session, LD 1875. This is the one where Juniper Ridge and Dolby, the state-run landfills, have to do some research on how to manage leachate from PFAS. We are working with our sister agency over at BGS to try to just find out what we can about managing PFAS in leachate. There are new emerging technologies. We're learning a lot about those month by month. More and more information comes out. Right now, there's no silver bullet, but I think our strategy between now and the time we report to the legislature is to continue to meet. Several agencies are meeting together already to discuss the different, treatment disposal technologies that are out there, and to see, what's going to fit. Every landfill is different. Just even comparing Dolby and Juniper Ridge is, very different. So very different solutions might be appropriate for those 2 facilities, just like some of the other landfills, the other 40 landfills we have around the state. Yeah, so that already happened. That happened last session. That was the PFAS in products bill. What that did is that requires, starting actually January of 23, manufacturers must report to the DEP any product. This is the entire universe of all the products that exist out there, like my clothes, our name tags, whatever. They have to report to the DEP what kind of PFAS are in their products, how much of it's in there. Whether it's unavoidable or not. I think that's the word that's in the legislation, is unavoidable. And so that is supposed to start coming January 1st, 2023. Also 2023, I believe there's a ban on, I think it's carpets and some textiles begins in 2023. But the rest of the PFAS products aren't likely to be banned until 2030. That's the date that the legislature put on for the overall ban of PFAS in products. PFAS will be banned in all products where the use is avoidable, meaning that if you don't need to have PFAS in these products, they will be banned starting 2030. So that's why that collection of information is so important. Yep. Okay, well, thank you so much. I look forward to meeting some of you in between sessions.
For your patience, really appreciate it. I'm Yvette Meunier with Androscoggin Valley Council of Governments on the Maine Resource Recovery Association's Education Committee. We are very proud to present today the Reaching Citizens with Special Events program. We are blessed to have you here. Katrina Venhuizen, sorry. She is an environmental educator at ecomaine, and she joined the team in August of 2016 with over 15 years of experience in various environmental education roles across the country. She is responsible for designing curriculum, on-site tour programs, as well as other education and outreach programming that facilitates engaged waste reduction amongst residents, schools, and businesses in ecomaine 70+ member communities. Take it away.
Morning, everyone. How are you today? Good. So I'm actually filling in for someone else, but it really works out because a lot of the things that I'm talking about today are my programs. So it really works out. So RSVP yes to events and outreach, using events as a community outreach tool. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So a lot of you probably know exactly who ecomaine is, and I don't need to tell you, but just in case you're not familiar with us, our mission is that ecomaine provides comprehensive long-term solid waste solutions in a safe, environmentally responsible, and economically sound manner. What we're going to focus on today is the last part, where our leader in raising the public awareness of sustainable waste management strategies. And of course, we follow the hierarchy. We have a lot going on when it comes to education and outreach. A whole long list here. The first thing we're going to talk about is our annual STAR open house. Of course, the annual is always if COVID is around. This year, unfortunately, is going to be the third year that we've canceled it. Unfortunately, we love having the open house. It's an incredible amount of fun. We get thousands of people, but that's one of the big things I'll focus on. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. Another program that we have is recycling grants. We give up to $5,000 per school every year. And so we actually have, I believe this year, either $30,000 or $35,000 total to give to schools. And there are schools in our communities, which you can see the map down at the bottom. And we can share that map with you at our table, which is out in the lobby as well, if you don't know if you're part of our communities or not. But yeah, we give money to schools to do recycling programs, composting programs, some garden stuff too, get reusable silverware. We gave money to a school on Peaks Island to get a dishwasher once, so they could use reusable silverware. So we're really focusing on trying to divert and get more stuff out of the trash can and reducing, reusing, and recycling and composting too. The next one, recycling is a work of art. We have a great program where we allow friends to submit art designs, and then we on a committee choose 6 designs, and then they paint our what we call silver bullets, or giant recycling containers. So that's a great way to get the art out in the community. And I don't know if it's scientifically proven, but I think that if a recycling bin is more beautiful, folks are going to use it and use it better. Another one, we do waste audits. So this is really fun. We basically dump out trash and we go through it. Who doesn't love doing that, right? We'll talk later about how I do it at the Maine Celtics games, the basketball games. You know, a ton of trash, just not a whole ton, but a lot of trash dumped out on the tarp up to my elbows in it, putting the right stuff in the right place and really figuring out what could have gone somewhere else. We do that, of course, in schools, not just basketball games. Our Eco Excellence Awards are really fun. We basically award folks in the community. They're put up for nomination by their friends, their community members, schools, etc., to say, hey, this person's doing a really great job at keeping our community clean and sustainable. Our in-person and virtual tours of our facilities, we do a really good job of inviting folks in, either in person or meeting them virtually and saying, hey, look, this is how we do it. This is what we do. This is where we do it. This is why we do it, etc. It's really just to give an inside track, as well as school and community classes and events. So we go out in the community, COVID safe, of course, these days. And if we can't go to the community, we do virtual tours or virtual programs of all different kinds. So we could do virtual conferences. We can do virtual classes. We could do virtual really anything at this point. When COVID hit, we really did shift, and we shifted very quickly so that we didn't really lose out on a lot of time of, figuring things out and creating something new. It didn't take a lot of time. I mean, we had a whole list of stuff up on the website very soon. So that was, I think, a really great tool that we had. We had the ecomaine Recyclopedia. Has anyone heard of that yet? Does anyone have it on their phone? All right, well, the ecomaine Recyclopedia is great. It's a searchable database. We have over 1,500 items in the database at this point. It's either online at ecomaine.org, or it's a free app on your smartphone, and you can type in styrofoam, gum, shoe, basketball, wedding dress, chainsaw, paperclip. You've got that thing. What do I do with that thing in my hand? You could look it up, and the Recyclopedia will tell you. And not only that, it will tell you with the waste hierarchy in mind. So maybe it's something that's compostable. So it will say compost first, but maybe you don't have composting available in your community. You don't have it in your backyard. You just don't have composting available potentially. Then it will say trash. So that's just an example of, something great about that. And then contamination tagging is the last one on here. With all of these events and programs and tours, etc., we planned to see 55,000 people this year. That was our goal. I think we might be past 69,000 people so far this year now. When I started almost 6 years ago, my goal was 12,000. The previous year was 8,000. So we've really come a long way, and events are a big part of this. We'll talk about the open house first. So there's a lot of things up here, but it's our open house roadmap. So how in the world do you plan an open house or any big event and make sure it's successful? Well, there's a lot going on. So do you have, or could you have facility tours? Always provide free breakfast or free something, because if nothing else, that gets people in the door. I mean, our breakfast sandwiches are incredible. I don't know if anyone's ever been to the open house, but they're real good. Made by staff members. So we've got, the people on 2R, the people on 3R, the people on the other side of waste to energy. Everyone's, coming together and making this event a really great time. We have the touch a truck and the kids activities. We've got crafts. We've got all kinds of fun things for kids to do. We've got great information for the adults with the exhibitors and community partners. We again bring people in with the free e-waste collection. Who doesn't love freeing up their space in their house and getting rid of e-waste? We really do a great job of doing the setup and parking and traffic direction. That's huge. If you plan an event, make sure that you are accounting for the traffic and the kind of congestion that's going to pile up, because people are going to flock to your event because you're going to offer such great things. We give away recycling and composting bins, really helping people at home make sure that they are putting their stuff in the right place. Information booths, we get people from the community. So Ruth's Reusable Resources, Goodwill, Gear Hub, all kinds of people are really coming together to mix and mingle and learn new things and have fun at the same time. We get our board and stakeholder ambassadors on board. We do a lot of publicity and promotion, Facebook and Instagram, Maine Public Radio, Forecaster, the many newspapers around town and the area, etc. And of course, setting the mood. You want to make sure that everyone's ready to have a good time, and all that comes with the things we're going to talk about. So first, you got to get them in the doors, right? And how do you do that? Well, again, the free breakfast, the free coffee. We also get cider from a local apple farm. So that's always fun. The kids don't drink coffee, but they love cider. So have something for everybody, even apples to snack on. The top left picture is our staff members cooking those really good breakfast sandwiches. We get our meat and cheese and English muffins and eggs from a local place. So, try and keep it local, try and keep it with the community. And even more fun, put signs up to say these eggs and etc. came from this place and the cider came from this place, and, get the community kind of involved with the project. Down at the bottom left, there's the touch a truck and the kids events. We had paper making, we had a weaving craft. I have a 2-year-old and kids love to touch trucks. So have recycling trucks there, have the front loaders that move the trash and recycling around, clean them up first, but it's a really fun time. Make sure you're putting out the publicity there. Maine Public Radio has been great. Eventbrite, the Portland Kids Calendar, etc., as well as your social media channels are really, really fun to get the word out. And then the bottom right is the info booths, your ecomaine table or your, wherever you're coming from, Maine DEP or Goodwill, whatever table it is, make sure you've got some great information there and hand it out at will. So get them in the door and then give them edutainment. That's a word that I learned while working with the Maine Celtics, the basketball team. It's education and entertainment together. So you make it fun, people remember it, people have fun at the same time. So we've got facility tours, we've got e-waste collection, giving away recycling bins, and of course more tabling and stuff to make it a great time. And don't forget the logistics. So you need to focus on the parking. Don't forget about that. And, public safety too. You don't want folks walking in the middle of the road when there's people coming and going. So how is the flow of traffic going to go? We have our fun electric car sitting out here at the front of the open house. So again, drawing people in with all the tools that you have. We have our stakeholders on board. So our board members, our ambassadors out in the community or out in the program. making sure that they're helping to talk to folks too. And of course, get the good vibes going. You know, we've got Slugger, we've got the Beacon, the Puffin from the hockey team. So getting the mascots there, again, drawing in the kids. It's just a general happy awareness and attitude here. We've of course got live music, or not live music, but we've got music pumping through. You could have live music. Everybody loves live music. So get the fun going. So that is our biggest event of the year. We also do things like Green Fest. We do Common Ground Fair. We do a lot of events during the year whenever COVID's not, putting a wrench in things. But let's move to our sports teams. So we've got the Maine Celtics. They used to be the Maine Red Claws. I don't know if anyone has followed them or are fans of them, but we've been partners with them since 2018. And we've had 21 games with them. And so over the course of the past couple of years, we've actually reached over 50,000 folks. I'll show that number on the next slide. It's pretty great. But a lot of things that we do are on court and in schools. So on court, you see the bottom left picture, that's a friend, and he's playing the Wicked Smart Recycling game. That's a game that we created for the Maine Red Claws, Maine Celtics now, where there's a kiddo on the court and you got a recycling bin and trash bin, you put all the stuff down and they race back and forth. And it's during one of the timeouts and they have a blast and they get this prize pack no matter what. So it's a fun time. And the kids are, the fans are watching and their parents are there and everyone's having a great time cheering for them. Up in the top left corner, we got our post-game waste audit. So 3 times during the season, we call it pregame, halftime, and post-game trash audits. And I basically am in their basement, dumping out the trash and going through it on a tarp and seeing what could have gone where. And it's been a really great experience of really finding out how they could improve and then giving them that feedback. In the middle, we've got your Celtics program ad. So seeing what they have at their facility and saying, okay, you can recycle these things and these things are trash. Making it very event specific is helpful because then folks will read, they're going through that program. They're going to see that and say, oh, cool, my paper plate, I can recycle that. Or my fork, that's got to go in the trash. And on the far right, we've got some programs that we created for the schools. Crusher and I can go in to the schools and we talk to the students. It's a lot of fun. I've done a school of 200 and I've done a school of 1,000. So it's a really great time to chat with the kids about what's recyclable, what's compostable, what's reusable, what's reducible, and then of course, what is actually trash. It makes things very memorable when you've got this big green, or he used to be red, mascot running around being really excited. I am sure the students remember every single word I say. Sure, but they definitely remember Crusher being there. And so that tied together in their head is a really great memory. Every student and adult in the school walks away with a recycled newspaper pencil, but more than that, a list of what we can and cannot recycle at their house. So they have to take home that list. I call that their homework. And they get the pencil as the reward. And so they are bringing home the information to their families. And so everybody's learning. It's not just the kiddo, they're teaching from the bottom up, which is great. And so again, I said that we've reached an incredible amount of people since 2018, over 50,000 friends, students and educators. That's at games as well as at the programs at schools. We're also with the hockey team. We started with them also in 2018. We've done 14 games with them versus the 21 for the Celtics. And we reached about 41,000 folks, which again is great. These games are actually larger. There's anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 people per stadium. With the Celtics, it's more like between 1,000 and 2,000. But either way, you're talking to friends, you're talking to folks and getting them interested and understanding what you're doing and how you're doing it. And if nothing else, just putting that bug in their ear of, hey, ecomaine is here, we do recycling. Do you know where your recycling goes? Do you know what happens to it? And it starts to make them think about it a little bit. The Mariners of Maine, we do a fun on-ice sorting game, just like at the basketball, but I get to talk on the mic in front of 4,000 people. It's really fun. So the kiddo is running back and forth and they get, again, a prize pack from us no matter what. Beacon, the Puffin, is very great. He's out there with us. He does the game with the kids sometimes, but it's just a really great, memorable thing too. And then of course we do tabling. So I can talk to, or whoever's at the table can talk to thousands of people per night, not just on the ice, as a little bit impersonal, but also face to face, and give them a pencil and say, hey, where does your recycling go? And show them the examples of yeses and nos. So the events, you can go big or you can go small, but either way, talking to folks is really the goal and helping them understand what's going on. Lastly, our education really shines. We do a great job with education. We have 3 staff that go out to schools and do virtual events and in-person events and virtual tours and in-person tours and tagging and preschool programs, senior citizen programs, middle school programs, you name it, we do it. Sometimes in the same week, we do every different grade and the adults and the kids and, you know, an event on the weekends. So it's really a lot of fun. We have about 450,000 folks in our service community, around 73 towns now, which is great. We're about to sign on Brunswick, or we did sign on Brunswick. They're about to start. So that's going to be a lot more folks sending their material to us. And we want to reach them all. You know, we can't possibly reach 450,000 people every year, but that 69, almost 70,000 people, that's doing a pretty good job. Because if you think about the one person we talk to, they're going to go home and tell a couple friends, especially if we do a really good job, right? So it's the multiplier effect. So it comes down to return on investment, right? You're spending time, you're spending money. What are you getting back? Well, we get folks who have an increased understanding of where their trash and recycling goes, what happens to it, and why it matters what they put in which bin, right? We don't want them to just put all their recycling in the trash or all their trash in the recycling. We show them what happens when that happens. What happens when that happens? Yeah, that works. And we make sure that they understand whys and hows and wheres and whats, so they have a deeper understanding and do the right thing. Trust and transparency, you know, we show people, again, what we're doing and how we're doing it. We tell people where our stuff goes. We make sure they understand what's happening so that they have kind of an understanding of their community and their environment around them. We have the connection to the community during our community events and all types, you know, our schools. We really try and get that strong bond. We're a thought leader. You know, folks come to us and say, how are you doing these programs? Why are you doing these programs? What can we do too? Like I'm talking to you here today. Hopefully any of you might implement some sort of program or anything like that, or ask us. We would love to share our thoughts and ideas and help you out. And of course, brand awareness. Anything we share with you that's a positive thing, you're going to remember. And that just makes us kind of seem better. And we want to make sure that everyone thinks of us as a good resource to ask and to look to and be there for the community. So return on investment is huge. You know, we offer an inside look at what happens in the process, and this generates trust in what and how we're doing. So the goal, start them off young, and with commitment and effort, we'll instill the passion and knowledge to the next generation, which means cleaner recycling and less garbage overall. So I'd love any questions if you have any. I know I didn't go the whole time, but that's okay. Yeah. At the municipal facilities or the school facilities? Okay, the question, if you didn't hear it, was, do we host events at our facilities? We have in the past. We had a great conference room on the first floor pre-COVID that we did some community events that would come in, and you know, we'd have schools come in. There was once Project Learning Tree workshop come in. So we do have that ability to host. Oh, gotcha. Would we go to a town and help them host? I don't see why not. You know, we would like to be a wealth of information, and if it's one of our towns and we can assist in any way possible in the waste reduction world, then we would be happy to help out with that. So let us know. Yes. So remember that we have 73 towns total. I know this map is quite small. I would pull up a bigger one, but it's not on my computer. But we have 73 towns total. We don't have everyone in Maine. You know, there's Casellas, there's the MRRA, and we're ecomaine. We take a certain number of amount of people, and we just can't take everything. So say Portland, South Portland, Gorham, Scarborough, those schools and those communities and those places can utilize us fully for any programs that they have, any community events that they have. But say we can't do Belfast because Belfast is not our community. We can't do Buxton because Buxton's not our community. Yes, within our towns. So again, you see this giant area here. We don't have this vicinity, but we have all these white dots are our towns, 73 total, soon to be 74. Yeah, so some tips on safety and how things run smoothly. You know, I did give the kind of roadmap. Obviously, this is not super intricate, but it's just some things to think about. You know, do think about the traffic. You know, what's the flow going to be? Are you going to have cones? Making sure that there potentially are even people directing traffic. You know, we get, again, thousands of people coming into our open house over the course of the 4 hours. If we didn't have people directing, it would be a mess. You know, people would be blocked in, there would be people running through traffic, it would be a mess. So making sure if it's going to be an event that's quite large, having folks direct traffic, signage to direct traffic, cones to direct traffic, et cetera, would be helpful. And then having certain areas, you know, have the touch of trucks right here, you know, in one area, and then maybe the food in another area, and then other things, you know, so they're kind of spread out a little bit. So, you know, the heaven forbid the truck turns on and it's not like spewing exhaust into the food area, you know, something like that. So just making sure that you've got the logistics down really well. But again, we're always happy to give you information, give you advice. I didn't say it out loud, but it was on the screen up here. info@ecomaine.org is a great way to reach us. You can also call our phone number and hit 1 for the education line area, but info@ecomaine.org is a great way to reach us. There's 3 or 4 of us that get those emails, so you'll always be answered. Yes. How are we funded? Is that one question? And then do we provide money for outreach and grants and things like that? Unfortunately, we don't give money for outreach. We give money for schools to buy recycling materials like bins and signage, composting contracts, things like that. But we don't provide, say, Gorham with a community outreach person stipend to go out and teach in Gorham. That's really kind of what we do. You know, we are going into the towns. I'm not going to say a town doesn't need a sustainability person, because I think that there's so much to work on. But as far as a town needing a specific recycling and trash educator, I think that we can do a good job at that. You know, we do have 73 towns total, but there are 3 educators, me included. So I think we do a good job at reaching folks and making sure that they're well educated. At any point, any of our towns can always reach out to us and say, hey, we need do-don't cards at the town hall. We would love a program for the school. We'd love a program at the library. We'd love you to come to this community event. And we don't see everything, but we try and reach out to towns too, to say, hey, you know, could you use this in your school? Could your library use this program? Are you having any events coming up too? Yes. Yes. So the question was, if you didn't hear it, Mark King is asking if he wanted to have a workshop at ecomaine and stream it live to all of our 73 towns or whoever in our area. Would that be possible? Absolutely, yes. I will say our conference room is under a little bit of construction. Oddly enough, we had a pipe burst in our waste to energy building when it was so cold. So it kind of got wet and moldy, so we had to strip it down. But come September, that conference room is going to be ready to go for you. Yes, please. Absolutely. No, we're all about getting the food out of the trash and into the compost, into anaerobic digesters, into animals, into people's hands. We're all about that. Absolutely. Yeah, reach out to me and then I'll help you figure out, you know, what the best thing is. Again, info@ecomaine.org will reach all of us. So either way, if you talk to anyone at ecomaine, we're going to help you figure out where the right place or right person is. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
So one time I
Gotcha. How are we funded and how can things happen in your area? Well, the first question, how are we funded? Currently, we get money from tipping fees. So any truck from a town, any Joe Schmo who cleans out an attic, anything that comes across our scales for trash or recycling, we charge a tipping fee. Because of course we have to manage and deal with that waste once it's here. So we have a tipping fee. Our waste to energy facility creates electricity. We only use ballpark 10 to 15% of that electricity to power our waste to energy facility and our recycling facility and our 2 electric cars on site. And then we actually sell the rest to the grid. So 85 to 90-ish% of the electricity we create, we sell, and that's a good chunk of change. And then also the recycling. The number 2 plastics, number 1 plastics, 3 through 7s, cardboard, ferrous, non-ferrous, etc. We sell all the recycling except for the glass. We actually smash up the glass and then reuse that, or folks come to reuse that in different applications. And it does take a good chunk of change to process that recycling, but anything that is processed and baled is sent out, and that gets us some more income and revenue as well. So those are the 3 ways that we get money now: tipping fees, electricity sales, and recycling revenues. How can you do it in your town if you're not in our facility area? I don't have a really great answer for you, but if you email us, we can help you try and find the answer to that. Again, info@ecomaine.org. We do like to help in any way we can. So that's something. Mark. And if folks didn't hear that conversation, that was about how do we get something going in our area if you're not an ecomaine community. So Mark King was talking about the waste diversion DEP grants, right? And how they have money available to communities and areas to help make sure that the waste is getting diverted away from the trash to maybe where it should go instead. Yes, sir. Yes, Maine Recycles Week is back. Yes, absolutely. So I was talking about Maine Recycles Week. It was a thing, and then it went away for a little while, and now it is back for the last couple of years. I'm on the planning committee for that, or the what do you call it? The group steering committee, the group that's creating it and helping to get it out there. So absolutely, we want everyone to be able to recycle no matter where you live, whether you're with an ecomaine community, whether you're with Casella, whether you go through MRA, whether your town doesn't do anything at all, but you want to do something. So we really want to try and get the information to folks and try and help them find what's best in their area. And if there's nothing in their area, how can they help get something in their area, or where is the closest place where they can find the information and services they need? Yeah, so there's one on here, one question up on the chat. Is there a way or tool that you guys use to keep track of the effectiveness of our events in terms of the effect on and participation with the community afterwards? So we do send out a survey after the open house of anyone who that gives us our email. We internally keep track of the numbers so we can then report, hey, we saw 10,000, 5,000, 55,000, 69,000, et cetera, however many people per year, per event, per class, per anything that we do. We keep meticulous notes on, say I do a program with Falmouth Elementary School and there's 1,000 kids in the school, but maybe 170 were absent. So I report about 800 students that I spoke to, face to face. So we just keep track of that internally. I believe it's on just an Excel spreadsheet. We have metrics on our YouTube videos, of course. So we do create virtual tours on YouTube and create a class, an online class, if a school needs that on YouTube, and post it there. And then we can keep track of how many folks see that. So I don't have a great answer on just how many people are thinking of ecomaine a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year down the road. But I do know one anecdote from a woman from the open house. She came to the open house like 5 years ago. So it's whatever year that was, just say, I came here 5 years ago. And she's been back every year since she came back the first time because it was such a fun experience. And she, raved about how she told all her friends and her family about it. So, going back to the events, make it a good time, make it memorable. If it's, a school program, make it memorable. Of anything, just make it memorable, make it full of education, make it interesting, and edutain them, and they'll remember it and share with others. Other questions? Yes. Absolutely. Chat with Casella, chat with us, chat with DEP, chat with whoever is in your area that you think could be helpful. If they don't know someone, they probably know someone who can help you out in whatever avenue you're looking for. Yes. Absolutely. I didn't even mention that in our huge list of things. So yes, we love to attend household hazardous waste days, or really any event that you're having. And yeah, handing out the do don't cards and saying to folks, hey, thanks for not putting this blank in your recycling. We don't want your antifreeze. We don't want your gasoline. We don't want your stuff. I was at a transfer station once and this guy just threw this whole box into the hopper, and I went to look in it and it was like containers full of oil, like dripping. I was like, no. So educating folks on what goes where, even if they're sitting in line waiting to drop off their antifreeze, any way that you can reach them, get to them. All right, well, thank you so much. Again, info@ecomaine.org, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all kinds of stuff out there for you. Thank you.
My name is Trampus King. I am the town manager of Dexter, and I am the treasurer and the secretary on the MRA board. Today we are, just to give you a little bit of other stuff, please fill out these evaluation summaries, the green sheet if you would. It helps us out on our next, each one of these that we do, just to point us in the right direction where you guys are looking for to get information. So it really helps us out. Today you guys are in the recycling and waste committees program right now. Our presenter is Harry Hopcroft. He's going to give you a little bit of information on the recycling sustainability in Brunswick, Maine. The group's been going for over 30 years. Harry also writes a column called The Recycle Bin, and they'll pick it up every once in a while in the Portland Press, and he gets a lot of feedback from that. So if you're out there looking to the Portland Press, make sure you look for the recycle bin. So as we go forward, this is Harry, and he's going to talk to us about his committee.
Okay, if anybody can hear. Apparently this thing works pretty well. Good, okay. So I guess first is thanks for Jessica Haviland and the Maine Resource Recovery Association for inviting me down here today to chat a little about what we're doing in Brunswick. Because I'm actually very pleased with how the committee has worked out. Well, history first. History of Brunswick is, of course, the history of landfilling, like everywhere else in the world. Actually started in the 16th century If you look at all these shell middens up and down the coast, that actually contain rather a lot more than shells if you dig around in them. And I have seen them as far up the Androscoggin as a little bit upstream actually of the dam at Brunswick. There was a small one there for many years. However, by 1983, our landfill was becoming not entirely compliant, and the state wanted it closed. We did close it, in fact, and in 1984, we opened a new secure landfill covering all of the then current requirements from the state, and also as part of that deal, a separate facility as a brush dump, or in the vernacular of the industry, an inert landfill. This young lady over here has clearly just discovered what an inert landfill really is. Mostly means no trash, from what I can tell. In any event, we closed that landfill in 2021, secured it, and secured it by also running series of the collection pipes under the surface that'll collect the off-gassing methane and flare that. Not an ideal solution. If money were not ever an issue, we would do some different things. But what we're doing gives us something on the order of 1/28th of the impact in CO2 equivalent of letting the methane just gas out. So it's really a big move forward. Recycling began in Brunswick as back as far as 1980. It was done to save space in the landfill because they were already figuring out that we were running out of space and they're looking at closure and they didn't want to spend the money. That's really why it got started. They started collecting at that time just clean mixed paper and clear glass at the curb. But they encouraged other stuff, primarily cardboard and colored glass, by having our citizens just carry the stuff down to the Public Works Department and hand separate it into separate bins, which is how most of the transfer stations still work. And it works very well as long as you can get people to do it. Actually, we had the only curbside program, as I understand it, until like 1989 or sometime like that. At the same time, they created a solid waste advisory committee because they didn't feel there was enough community support for recycling and they wanted to encourage it better. 14 members on the committee appointed by the town council. And we're tasked, in fact, to look at all areas of waste management as well as the curbside recycling. Making recommendations to the town manager and to the town council based on what amounts to the solid waste hierarchy that we're all familiar with here, and which then form the basis of the state law enacted in 1989. As the name suggested, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee had an advisory role only, no direct implementation role of any sort. They did, however, find success at driving recycling to becoming mandatory in 1989. Again, partly arguing to save space in the landfill and therefore some money that way. But in 1989, November, the town actually bought 6,000 of these little bins like they're shown there to do the recycling. First town we know of to do so, and it had two big effects. The first being that it made recycling easier to do, and the second was peer pressure. Turns out, if the guy on either side was putting his blue bin out every week, and you weren't, pretty soon you started putting your stuff out at night, before anybody could notice. And then pretty soon you got a bin. I'm still using mine. They were pretty good bins, actually, that they bought. The Solid Waste Advisory Committee was reconstituted about 5 years ago as a recycling and sustainability committee with pretty much the same sort of goals of advising the town manager and the town council on ways to do solid waste management better. And looking particularly at the high costs we were then facing of solid waste management and making the recommendations. And as you might imagine, they really had no shortage of projects to look at. The current iteration of the Recycling and Sustainability Committee is now 9 volunteer members from the community, plus a high school student and a Bowdoin College student. Bowdoin College being in Brunswick, of course. And we have also the Public Works Director and 2 council members as ad hoc members of the committee. Problem there being it's a very slow process. It can take 4 months, 3 months to 4 months to get a new member on the committee. And that's why we now have 2 empty slots. One of which I'm hopeful is going to be finally filled sometime this month of May. We also originally included the high school and Bowdoin College students to make sure we included that group of stakeholders into the discussions. I will have to say it's been less successful than we had hoped or than the taxpayers have been, because the students just have a different set of agendas than we do. They're busy, they have a high turnover, they take just as long to replace as a taxpayer, and just too many distractions. So they have not been as effective as we had hoped they might. And when we're doing some reorganization, there's some discussion whether that will continue, particularly the high school members. First project was looking at glass. Turned out at the time that for about 5 years, our glass had not actually been recycled at all. It was being picked up as recycling, and we were being charged to pick it up as recycling. We would then be in charge to have it sorted out of the recycling and charged again to put it in the landfill. All of it was going to the landfill. So 2 years ago, when a lot of towns were stopping their recycling programs entirely because of the cost, the low cost of the commodities, we made a compromise with the town council and stopped recycling glass. And at the same time, we moved or began our efforts to move our processing of trash and recycling to ecomaine. One of my things about that. And we're currently relooking or reorganizing the committee subcommittee structure to reflect some current and changing needs that we're seeing there. Currently, and we'll talk about this as we go on here, currently we have 4 subcommittees. Implementation being of the move to ecomaine. Organics, we don't compost in Brunswick. We do organics recycling. So you can make of that what you like. There's also a solar energy subcommittee and a public education subcommittee. The goal of the implementation committee was to coordinate the move to ecomaine primarily. That's now nearly completed. About a year ago, the process was approved by the town council. In April of this year, they finally got to look at a plan and said to the town manager, now, get it done now. And it looks like that's really going to happen for the last time in July 1. It was a big effort. We have a couple of people on our committee who have a long time served in the waste management community and industry, and they were able to and be aware of the EPA WARM model, which is a model for analyzing all aspects of municipal solid waste. So it looks at the transportation side, the landfilling side, the cost of waste to energy, and looks also at the environmental costs and savings of all the different options we had. And we came up with 6 different scenarios, and we're able to look at all of the dollar and environmental costs and savings of all 6 of them to come up with our recommendation for what we ended up with. Hopefully July 1. The Organics Subcommittee initially developed a 3-pronged program for organics recycling, which includes the backyard composting, curbside pickup, and free drop-off points. They then have secured a Maine DP grant for an intern position in town, with which we're adding some town dollars to expand and extend that position a little bit. And that's there to fund and promote the three-pronged program that we have above and to help educate the public. Now, that's going to include, first of all, on the composting, the town has purchased 165, I think, backyard composters, which they will be offering to citizens and taxpayers at basically half retail cost. Closer to 200, as I remember, of the little canisters for the kitchen that will be offered either at low or no cost to our citizens. And expansion of the free drop-off points. The idea here was that backyard composting requires a little one-off upfront cost to come up with the composter, whether we do it through this program or we don't. And then it's pretty much done after that. The curbside pickup is a monthly fee-based thing for garbage to garden, has some real benefits to it. For example, particularly if you don't have room in the backyard to do much composting, they pick up a 5-gallon pail every week, replace it with a cleaned pail every week. And if you ask them, also a bag of compost. That is really very nice stuff, the compost that they leave there. But if you either really can't afford that cost, or you're just unwilling to spend it, but you somehow feel like you'd really like to do the right thing, you can take your kitchen collector or whatever it is, drive it to one of these drop-off points, dump it into the canister or the tote that's there, and you're done. There is no cost to our citizens to do that. And AgriCycle picks up the totes every week and puts them through their digester system to turn them into high-grade compost. The solar subcommittee, I think we'll see being expanded to sustainable energy of all sorts, because solar only is just a little too restricted. The chair of that committee is a solar guy, so that's where they start. And they have successfully signed the town to a 20-year agreement with a solar farm somewhere here that will in fact save us a great deal of money on our municipal electric bills. The issue there is that solar is restricted. And in the next 20 years, I say the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot of other stuff coming down the pipe with which we're going to need to be familiar. And that may very well upstage solar as the sort of, what am I looking for here? The sort of golden boy of the day. And when that happens, we're going to need to be ready to do it. And from what I've known in my career, starting way back doing energy auditing days and solar hot water days, there ain't enough acreage in all of Maine to completely electrify the state and provide that electricity with photovoltaic solar. So we've got to look at some other stuff. You know, we got to look at wind, got to look at offshore wind, certainly, tidal power, river power, ocean power, whatever it's going to be. There are a lot of things to look at, and we just have to be looking at those and be flexible. And finally, the Public Education Committee, which is the one I chair. And I have to tell you, our biggest problem has been there's been no town support for public education. We have no access to the web, no access to the town mail system, no access to the town social media, and zero funding for any sort of promotional materials under education. Our intern being expanded a bit with our public funding gives me hope that we're going to be able to now, she being a paid employee, and that taking away one of their primary arguments that none of us as volunteers are paid. God forbid we get anywhere near the town website, even though I've been doing websites since 1981, and I have a pretty good idea how they work. In any case, I also write a weekly column for the Brunswick Times Record on what you can recycle, what you can't recycle, and how to do it properly. And that has been probably our most successful effort at education in the last year. Also ran a very successful course at Midcoast Senior College a year ago, last fall, on recycling and sustainability. And it was well received and had a number of people from some of the surrounding communities there who have felt it helpful and kept in touch actually to do a similar sort of effort moving forward. I will tell you, I've had very little success with social media. In part, that may be because I don't do social media. I've been doing computers for long enough to know better. But the big issue there is that the messages just have to be too short. When they ask me to write something for social media, every time, oh, I can't have anything. That whole paragraph, you can't put a whole paragraph in here. 7 words is not enough to say anything useful. Sorry, it just is not. Okay. Now, our new intern is a recent graduate of Bates College. So she, of course, thinks that all of the information in the world is moved from any point A to any point B by social media. We're going to find out because she's going to try to use it. So I'd be delighted in this case to find out. I really don't know what I'm talking about here. And if she can show me how to make it work, I'm all over it. But not been successful so far. All right, so what have we done anyway is mostly, I think, our biggest achievement is we finally got the town manager to move and get the contracts done to make the move to ecomaine. And it was done in 3 ways. First way, by doing a lot of solid research by the implementation committee. So much so I had to give you a picture here of the chair doing his homework right there. And then some solid reporting of the economics involved so that we can make them simple enough to understand. And looking at the spreadsheets that warm model puts up is not a good way to educate the public about how this stuff works. But we were able to pull the salient parts out of that and break it down to dollars and cents and to the CO2 equivalents on the environmental side. And then finally, we did it through an email campaign through our local personal contacts, with which we were able effectively to overwhelm the town council and the town manager with citizen support for this kind of a move. And I think that was what finally moved it. When I was doing my vote count before the last vote at the town council, I knew I had 5 out of the 9. We got 9 out of 9. And I was pretty confident 2 of them were going to vote against, and in the end they didn't. And I think that's because of that campaign.
What was the opposition of the town manager?
At some risk here, I think that he was afraid of the transition and wants things to just always stay the same and not have to think about it too much. He's always been in the position of the little silver handle. You push the handle and it all goes away and you don't have to think about it again. And part of that was that there actually were 3 contracts involved. One for the curbside, one for business, one for the municipal, and they were all rolled into one and they have to be separated. So there was a lot of work there. And he was initially afraid when we showed him the several $100,000 savings that the town council was going to think he'd been wasting that money for 10 years. Instead of thinking it more imaginatively and being able, which he could very well have, and we would have supported it, saying, look, you guys, we've been spending this for 10 years. I found a better way, which is ultimately what happened. Took a full year to get that done. But it looks like we're going to start on ecomaine. And what we have here actually is a swap program. Casella Systems is going to continue to pick up our trash and recycling, and they're going to do with it what they will. What they're going to do instead is take an equal tonnage from their Westbrook transfer station and deliver that to ecomaine in our name. So while it's not our trash that's going to ecomaine, we are in effect effectively removing an equal amount of that from the landfill stream, if you will, and getting it to the waste to energy. And it locks in, for us, it locks in for 10 years, that piece of their capacity, which is very limited on their waste to energy side. The recycling side, they have plenty of room, but the waste to energy side has been a problem, and we get that locked in. On the recycling side of things, we also have a clause in there so that if the contamination goes up, then the hauler and not the town is responsible for any of the excess costs that might cause. So it looks like a pretty solid program, and it gives us also opportunities to work with other haulers if that turns out to be advantageous. And it also, by doing that, keeps us or avoids running packet trucks 3 a day back and forth from Brunswick down to Portland, which when you put it in the warm model is a substantial savings in CO2 equivalent. So there's a large environmental benefit to doing that kind of a swap program as well. So I'm pretty happy with it. It's going to be a confusing thing to convince some of the taxpayers. But if you think it through carefully, it actually makes a whole lot of sense to do it that way. And it's, as a practical matter, it's the best we're going to do right now anyway. So, yeah, so take it. So then my final thought, anybody remember hearing this from your grandmother? I certainly do. It came out of the Second World War, and it still addresses directly the first item on the solid waste hierarchy. You know, don't make trash in the first place. Yeah. And I think it sort of sums up nicely what we're really trying to do here. So with that, I thank you. And we can, since there was supposed to be 2 others here originally, one couldn't do it, and the other one, I don't know what happened to him or her. Well, it means we get to chat for another few minutes if anybody'd like, about whatever aspect of this.
So you said was it waste savings or to switch to go to ecomaine? What you guys were doing? It was a savings.
Oh, it's a big dollar savings, and it's a large environmental savings. And so between the two, it comes down to several $100,000 a year. And it was going to cost us in dollars, $300,000 a year more to truck the stuff directly to Portland instead of trucking it to West Bath. Yeah. I should know that. I don't actually know what the ton is. I have it in my notes, but yeah, more than I want to carry. I know that. Yeah. So. It's a model which is built on a spreadsheet, and it just has the inputs for pretty much every aspect of the thing. And we used town numbers as best we could for tipping fees, for transportation fees, for recycling costs, recycling returns that we get based on what the recycler gets for the bales are a commodity. And so the commodity prices, as they go up and down, we get a rebate as they go up and they cost more. And it's gone from costing us 100 and something a ton to getting back $49 a ton recently for some of that recycling. And that's what the warm model will model and come up with. And I've never used it personally. I let the guys who know what they're doing do that stuff. Go ahead, Bruce. They have their own programs up there at the college, and they cooperate with us wherever they can. Their students are very enthusiastic about these sorts of things and have gotten some things changed and improved at Bowdoin College with their campus activities, but they don't drive our program or the other way around in any direct way, no. But they're very active and very concerned. I know their new buildings, for example, are all done with geothermal heat, which is a pricey proposition these days to get into. Yes, ma'am. Oh, absolutely, yeah, and I have roots in Georgetown, and the Georgetown Mall is a big part of life down there. Yeah, and I think they're very, very effective. It's not a part of it currently. I'm hoping it will be again. There was a small area for that at the landfill, but it wasn't, in my mind, handled very well because a lot of it ended up on the pile anyway. But well-run, those things can do very, very well. And I think we'll see some agitation for that in the next couple of years. First things first. Yeah. Who else is doing this kind of stuff? I'm sure I'm missing something that we should know about. Sure.
I would encourage you not to give up on high school students. I think that's part of what we have to do, all of us, is to think about not only what gives them life skills, but they need to participate. And that's part of our job too. So I wonder if you think about maybe other folks who work to like empower them.
Yeah, two ways we've approached that. I will say that they've been very enthusiastic when they've been there. They just don't last very long. And actually, a year ago last summer, there was a group in the high school actually produced most of the little flyers and charts and stuff that I have available for what you can recycle and what you can't, that you can stick on the refrigerator. So when you're wandering around the kitchen and looking, what can I do with this? I'll tell you there. We also have some programs have been working within the schools, the elementary schools, and talking with ecomaine. They have some programs that will let us work more directly with the schools also. And I see more of that coming. I hear what you're saying. And on the committee itself, the issue has been the things that I described, not because there's any issue with how they work or what they're doing. And they do have some environmental club activity going, particularly in elementary schools. One of the things we found there was that the students were willing to do all that stuff. And then it was ending up in a bin in the back and all going into the same trash can after that. And that, particularly with the younger ones, is not itself a sustainable program, if you will. So that needs to be improved. And the school committee and the town council are both elected, and neither one gets driven by the other. So we have a whole nother side we have to convince to do those changes. We'll get there. We'll get there. We will. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Harry. Lunch is at 12:05. Take this time for you guys. We got a little bit extra time. Go check our vendors out. They're the ones that make this happen. They're right out there on the way down through. So please stop by and see them. And thank you guys very much.